I'm here with Matt Richards, the moderator of the Greatest Match Ever project, the genesis of the Great Match Generator here. How you doing, Matt?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Good. I hope you've been enjoying the podcast so far as we're randomly looking back on some of the greatest matches ever.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been great. I haven't had nearly enough time to listen to them, but now that the ballots are all calculated and the results are out, hopefully my schedule will clear up a little bit more and I can backtrack where I've missed things. But yeah, definitely been really good.
Yes. And I have you here today to talk about the top 25 at least, and to at least talk about the ballot itself and how people can get involved. So what's the genesis of the project?
Yeah, so the genesis of the project, and we talked a little bit about this last time. Kind of a spin-off of the Greatest Wrestler Ever project over at Pro Wrestling Only a few years ago. And a few of us just wanted to do something a little bit different and have a project really focused on matches. So, a few iterations happened. I won't bore you all with the behind the scenes details of all the different ideas that people had and how we went through them. But ultimately, we decided to do a pretty simple greatest match ever. And through that first year, we really came to the decision that it would be best to do one every year. I think it takes a lot of the pressure off people's ballots and gives people kind of incentive to get involved even if they weren't able to commit as much time as they wanted to the project. So we're over at it's actually gweprojects.freeforums.net, kind of a convoluted little address there. And it's GWE projects, not GME, just the way it was originally set up by the original moderator. And we haven't really had the motivation to revamp this entire kind of massive forum to fix that yet. I think people have been able to find it pretty easily because a lot of people kind of shuffle over from the PWO boards because we have still a lot of people with presence over there.
Right, right. And the Greatest Wrestler Ever project caused a lot of dissension, but this sort of takes the pressure off of it, which is something I like because it's not every 10 years, it's every year that we're looking. And
Yeah,
and like we're not putting as much pressure on who's number one, who what
yeah.
this better be.
I think that the thing with and I didn't participate in the Greatest Wrestler Ever project. I got involved with that forum about a year before the ballot was due. And again, I didn't feel like I'd put in enough work to do that, to put forth a ballot. But I think it was just the pressure. I think it was the investment that people had that they really sort of had an investment in this project producing something, and when it didn't produce exactly what they thought, maybe there's just a little friction, I think, over there with some people. And I don't know that that's necessarily the case anymore. I think it's a really great board, and I think there's a lot of really great conversations over there. But in the aftermath, that was one of the things that sparked this project, was doing something kind of similar, but producing something where there wasn't kind of that potential for friction between members.
Yeah, and that's what I like. It's just like I can parachute in at any time, and I have parachuted in a few times. I haven't
Hmm.
voted, but
Hmm.
but I've commented on match threads and stuff like that, and it really has. It's really easier to just look at a match rather than look at a whole wrestler's body of work.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's even though there are so many matches to think about. I mean, we presently have over 1,000 matches fully nominated and over 500 in the nomination process. And I'm sure we're in some way scratching the surface of what could be potentially discussed. It's one match. It's at most probably an hour and a half of your time if it's a really long one. A whole body of work is a whole different it's a whole different ball game. It's quite daunting, and that's another reason I prefer this kind of thing right now, just for my watching habits.
Yeah, because because I just like to throw on a match here and there and just do it all. Not to say looking at a whole wrestler's body of work isn't interesting. It's just easier to do that when you're just focusing on the matches.
Yeah, absolutely. I would love to be able to dive into Terry Funk's entire career, but you know, I cherry pick a lot because it's just the way I'm able to watch. I don't have enough time, to be perfectly honest, and I love watching great matches. I'm oriented towards wrestling in a match kind of way, and I think this project has been really great to open my eyes to lots of new wrestling without feeling overwhelmed.
Yeah, let's talk about people having different views on match structure and stuff like
Mm-hmm.
that. What were Did you have a criteria going into your ballot or anything
Uh,
like that?
yeah, not really. I don't, I think that's one of the things that I like doing is trying to figure out how to not necessarily quantify, but maybe to put into words this thing that's very difficult to put into words. What makes a great match? What bring like there's so many different things on my ballot. For example, you've got lucha and shoot style and joshi and modern wrestling, modern indie wrestling, and how do you compare the two, or how do you compare any of those? It's really difficult. So I try to do that, but I inevitably fail. And so I do have like some terms that I throw around, some drama and storytelling and urgency and things that I find consistently through my list. But really what happened is I started about, geez, probably 6 years ago now, doing kind of my own little star rating sheet like so many people do, and really just for me to help me remember what I liked about matches, because I'm not great at remembering the little details of things after a couple years after not seeing it. And it just kind of was nice to be able to compare. And then that came in really handy because I could go back and look at the matches I'd given 5 stars to and 4 and 3/4 stars to and start from there and then kind of build my list around that. And it's an imperfect science for sure, but there's things, and I think maybe we'll get into a little bit when we start talking about the top 25, because there's quite a few of those matches that wound up on my ballot, obviously, that
Right.
there's some criteria that tend to show up on my list a lot, but it's really looking at matches and figuring out which one's the best. It's tough.
Yeah, it is tough, and we here at Great Match Generator have
Mhm.
scratched the inchiest of surfaces here.
Yeah.
It's not overwhelming because I'm doing it bi-weekly and I'm doing it, because I love great matches,
Right.
and I think part of the reason why I asked the two co-hosts I wrote to, but to host the show, is because they view wrestling differently than I do.
Yeah.
Because obviously, because Greg views wrestling like the pomp, the circumstance,
Hmm.
and Beast Mike views wrestling in a similar way that I do with like the match, and I think it's a really good dichotomy.
Yeah, I like that kind of bouncing these different styles off of each other and looking at wrestling in different ways. I think that's a strength of y'all's conversations, and again, it's also a real strength of the board, right? You look at what Elliot likes versus what I like versus what Boss Rock likes. Various people, micro statistics, various people who are regulars on the board. We all have pretty different tastes, but we also all know each other's tastes, so we can make recommendations to each other, and have some admittedly short but pretty rich discussions about wrestling and matches and wrestlers throughout the board's history.
Yeah, and it's really interesting to see, looking back on those discussions, just how people view wrestling, and and I'm going to start bringing in some of those people's thoughts into it, because it's part of the project.
Yeah.
It's to bring those people's thoughts, and plus the dichotomy of the three people that are part of the hosting,
Sure.
you know. you want to get as many opinions as possible.
Yeah, absolutely. The more voices, the merrier, as far as I'm concerned. In sorting through this, I think, we'll see once we get to the top 25. There's a handful of matches that I think continuously do well, but I think I said when we were doing the reveals, man, you could have 16 other ballots from a completely different fan set, and the 100 would look way different.
Yeah.
Would be a completely different set of match. I'm sure there are people who would look at our top 100 and be totally confused as to why these are the 100 matches that got selected, but these are the 100 matches selected by 16 different fans who are pretty diverse and not really a homogenous group, to be honest.
Right. Right. And my goal is to eventually vote in this thing,
Yeah,
but I don't feel comfortable because I haven't logged enough star ratings, but
sure.
I could think of 100 off the top of my head if I really tried.
Right, right. Yeah, it's all about individuals' comfort, right? If you feel comfortable submitting a list, we've opened it up to anybody and everybody. There's not really a criteria. It's a sort of honor system, right? We expect people to do some due diligence, but I don't expect anybody to watch a certain number of hours of wrestling or to agree with anybody on the board, to be perfectly honest.
Right, let's get into this top 25 here.
Yeah.
Number 25, Mitsuhiro Misawa and Kenta Kobashi versus Toshiaki Kawada and Akira Taue. This combination we'll see a lot. Um, Real World Tag League 12-3-93, this iteration of the match.
Yeah, it's a really good match. I haven't watched this one in some time. This one did not make my list, but I think it's up. I mean, it's obviously a commonly accepted as great match. Made 8 ballots, so half of the ballots included this match, and it got at least one top 10 vote. So it's a banger of a tag team match, and it's got a lot of drama, and I think it's a top selling performance from Kawada. No surprise there. He's a great seller. And I think
Yes.
he's in some ways the kind of star of this one, but these four just have such great chemistry. It's no secret, it's 90s All Japan it's not a hidden gem. Most everybody knows about it by this point. They're fantastic together.
Yes, and I think when we get to a future match on this list, we know what the peak
Sure.
is.
Yeah.
But we'll get to it when we get to it. Number 24, Bret Hart versus Owen Hart, the WrestleMania match.
Yeah. So another one I didn't vote for. I had a conversation on the board recently. I guess it was in the last year. Somebody really just surprised that I didn't have this in my kind of top 5 WWE matches, WWF matches. I love it. It's a technically proficient masterpiece. It's a match between two brothers who are proving that they're legitimately two of the best wrestlers in the world. It's not at all a bad match. It would probably be my top 150, 200. It's just not a match that I really have considered for my top 100 yet. Maybe I should rewatch it because it has been a while. What do you make of this match? I feel like I'm low on this match, generally speaking.
I haven't watched it in a while, but I've connected with the story whenever I've watched it,
Yeah.
and it's something where it's like two brothers trying to best each other. It's something you can relate to because we all have brothers, we all have sisters. It's just people trying to, and it happens to be two of the best wrestlers in the world.
Yeah, I think that's the real strength of it, is this very relatable story that's not told in wrestling a ton. It's not
Right.
it's not like we see the brothers against one another in wrestling all the time. So I think that's a real strength of it. I think I just like a little bit more like hate and toothiness in my wrestling. That's like a thing that gets me invested a little bit more, and that might be, even though that's there, it's kind of under this veil of pretty proficient wrestling, and again, maybe I'm not doing it justice because it has been a little bit, but I've always felt like I'm low on this match. Maybe I should make sure I watch it before next year's project, but It's definitely a classic, and I definitely prefer it to the cage match myself.
Yeah, I prefer it to the cage match because I think the cage match could have been more filled with vitriol and hate,
Mm-hmm.
and they wrestled it sort of similar to the WrestleMania match in in the fact that they're trying to do some pretty wrestling,
Mm-hmm.
but inside a cage.
Yeah. It's again another match I haven't seen for a while. I just really don't like escape cage matches in general. I've
No.
never really understood that rule myself. Again, something a lot of other people really like, and I don't remember where the cage match landed. I'm sure it got some votes in the others receiving votes list, but this is a great match. It's a deserved top 100 match. Just 24 is a little rich for my blood personally, but that's again beauty of the project. Made 9 ballots. That's over half. That's pretty good.
Yeah, this match made 8 ballots, half the ballots, but it had a high vote of third. Had 590 points, only 7 points ahead of the Bret Owen match. Nick Bockwinkel versus Kurt Hennig. Should we explain the points? So is it 100 to 1?
Yeah, it's a pretty basic system. So the number one vote gets 100, number two gets 99 points, number three gets 98 points, and so on, all the way down to where your number 100 vote gets 1 point. So pretty straightforward, no curve, and it's just calculated from there.
Yep. Yep. So Nick Bockwinkel versus Kurt Hennig. I have never seen this match.
Oh, really?
I I I just AWA is a blind spot.
Sure. Beautiful match to me. This is a pure classic in every sense of the word. Probably the best 60-minute match ever, in my opinion. Just a real joy to watch. It's Nick Bockwinkel's masterpiece. I think Kurt Hennig is great in it, but to me, Bockwinkel is the kind of maestro in this, and he's leading the way. It's just fantastic. It's a match you kind of have to set aside some time and be in the right headspace for. It is a Broadway match in the mid '80s, so you're not getting the complete, you're not getting all the flash that you might expect from a modern long match, but it's really, really good storytelling, and the finish is absolutely fantastic. So I can't recommend this match highly enough. I think it's, to me, a total lock for the top 100. I think I had this somewhere in the teens. I'd have to look again, but yeah, great, fantastic wrestler. I had about 15, I believe.
Wow. So that's a high recommendation. I'll definitely check it out. Hopefully it's somewhere.
Yeah, I think it's out there.
22. 22. Aja Kong and Bull Nakano versus Shinobu Kandori and Akira Hokuto. This is for the next next two actually. I haven't seen.
Oh, okay.
I have a
Uh,
lot of blind spots in my wrestling.
sure. Yeah, I'm totally understandable. There's entirely too much wrestling to watch, to be perfectly honest. This is, to me, the highest degree of difficulty match that I've ever seen. There are so many woven together narratives in this tag match. You have Hokuto chasing Bull. You have Kandori and Hokuto, sort of these rivals that are coming off of this incredible series of matches. You have Kandori and Bull, who have kind of their own little rivalry and their own kind of heat between them, and then you have Kong and Kandori, who've never met in singles competition, who never had a singles or one-on-one match, which I think is really interesting to see them lock up here and get a little taste of what that might have looked like. Because personally, to me, Kandori is one of the best wrestlers ever. She's one of the most underrated wrestlers ever. I would say most people would rank all three of the other women ahead of her. I would not. I think she's a top 10 to maybe even top 5 wrestler and a top 3 big match wrestler. So I have a ton of time for Kandori, and I have a ton of time for everybody in this match. It's it's very complex narrative woven together, but it's also just four women going in and beating the hell out of one another. And I think you can enjoy it whether or not you know about those other storylines.
Right.
You can enjoy it in a vacuum, and you can perhaps even enjoy it a little bit more if you have a little bit of that background. And that background is provided on the board. We have somebody who's translated some of the promos from around this time period as well. So that's really helpful. And this match got a number one vote. You know, this is a really top tier match if you are into Joshi, and if you are sort of into these wrestlers. This is a big time match, and this finished 7 for me. So again, really cannot recommend this one enough, but set aside some time to sit and focus for about 30-40 minutes.
Right. Right. And I love sitting and focusing on like the interwoven stories.
Mm-hmm.
I think wrestling can tell these interwoven stories very well, and it's a testament to the art of pro wrestling.
Absolutely.
21, Volkan versus Kiyoshi Tamura. The only rings I've seen is the Vader stuff with Tamura.
Okay, so the Vader Tamura match, and have you seen the Vader Takada matches?
Yeah, I've seen the Vader Takada matches. I think rings is, from what I've seen, is freaking awesome.
Yeah.
It's the kind of shoot style I like.
I love shoot style rings and UWFI, even some other promotions. Just I love shoot wrestling. I think it's right up my alley. Violence, urgency, that kind of organic build that feels real and makes you forget you're watching pro wrestling. I really really like that.
Right, but this match is like one of the highest tiers in shoot style wrestling history, right?
Oh yeah, this is the second of their 3 matches. It's, obviously, as if we're taking this as any sort of indication about the kind of general feel on matches, this is generally regarded as the best of the 3. The 3 matches kind of tell the story of Tamura facing the Maestro Han and working to over time overcome him. And this kind of strikes a balance that I think speaks to a lot of people. I still prefer their first one. I think Kenta has a little bit has rougher edges to it for me that I really just enjoy. But this is one I voted for. This is still a 5-star match to me. This is some of the slickest shoot wrestling you will ever see. Their ability to transition and to grapple and to make it look real and dangerous without hurting one another is jaw-dropping impressive. And Volkan is a guy that if people haven't seen him, go watch him. He is just so slick, and Tamura is a freak athlete. They're really great together. They have some of the best chemistry in all of wrestling history.
Yeah, I've heard about Volkan, and people say he's like one of the greatest ever. But he's only had like 60 matches, something like that.
Yeah, it's neither one of these guys have had a ton of matches. They both had relatively limited careers because they were involved in other things. They were involved in actual fighting. They were involved in a variety of things. So I don't know the exact number, but it is an absurdly low number of matches to have multiple matches on top 100 lists. They're prodigies, both of them. It's really impressive.
Speaking of prodigies, 2 prodigies of pro wrestling. Number 20 with 624 points. I think this match would be on my ballot if I voted. I'm pretty high up. Ric Flair, Terry Funk, I quit. I mean the Great American Bash. My bad.
Yeah. This is
the bash match. The bash match is awesome. I think both matches would make my top 100 if I really thought about it. But this is the better match.
Yeah. So you prefer this one as well?
Yeah, I prefer this one to the I Quit.
Yeah, I do too. This is, it's everything you'd want two of the greatest wrestlers ever to produce. It's kind of chaotic and violent, and it's Terry Funk sort of at his very best, pulling out a different side of Flair than we'd just seen in the Steamboat feud, and just high level wrestling in every way. There's a reason it's canonical. There's a reason it's top 20. It's wonderful wrestling. I mean, I have it. It made my list a little bit lower, but this is a match that if somebody had it number one, I wouldn't bat an eye. It's absolutely fantastic, and one of the best post matches ever. Just pure chaos afterwards. Really, really, really fun wrestling.
Number 19, Kazuhiro Shibata, Kazuchika Okada. New Japan Pro Wrestling 4/9/2017. Finished 57th last year. 640 points, 8 ballots. Hybrid was 6th.
Yes.
This is one of the greatest matches of all time, in my opinion.
Yeah, huge jump up for this. So I think the kind of thing with this match is talking to some of the other people who've submitted ballots. There's been like a little bit of a hesitancy to vote for really new matches because I think a lot of us like to see how a match ages. How does a match feel after 5 years versus fresh in your brain? And this match, certainly after it was fresh in 2017, everybody was buzzing about it. It was, everybody's consensus 5-star match of the year. And that sort of hanging over you, Shibata's injury and then retirement hanging over the match didn't seem to really, it seemed to actually add to the legend of it and the mythos in the immediate aftermath. I can imagine this match only moving up, to be perfectly honest. It's only been about 3 years, and I think people are already sort of feeling really comfortable with this match being part of their top 100 and moving up. It moved up for me. It moved into the sort of middle of my ballot, and I can see it going up again, just kind of depending on how I feel and if I get a chance to watch it again compared to some other matches that are kind of in its neck of the woods. I can see this match moving up a little bit too. It's great pro wrestling. It's an all-time performance from Shibata. It's Okada's entire career as champion to this point informs what he's able to bring and how he's able to bring out the best in Shibata. So I think it's high level stuff. It's the best of New Japan, the modern New Japan product, in my opinion.
Yeah, I really agree with that sentiment. I view Okada as already as one of, and this may be because I'm young and I'm dumb, but I already view Okada as one of the all-time greats because I see the consistency.
Yeah.
And I see the fact that he can wrestle so many different people and get so much out of so many different people.
Yeah, he's a sort of unfairly maligned in some circles, I think, and people get exhausted by the modern New Japan product because it's just so many great matches. At a certain point, I think people feel like, okay, you've proven you can produce a great match. Now, so what? Like, make me care about it. I think if you really give Okada a chance and watch him in something like the G1 and watch how he does different things with different opponents to build in these kind of layered narratives that they're going for, you get a little bit more appreciation for him. I watched the entire G1 last year. I don't know if I'll ever do that again. It was exhausting, but I cherry pick and I try to watch as much as I can this year. And he's great. He's a great professional wrestler, and he's getting better with age, and he's still really young. I mean, I don't think it's absurd at all to think of him as one of the best ever. He's only going to add to that legacy. And while I said this is an all-time performance from Shibata, I do think he's the kind of star of the show. Okada brings a lot to this match, and his contribution should not be forgotten at all.
Yeah, and Shibata in this match is so phenomenal. I'm like, you're just in awe watching this, and it's something where you're just in awe that he had to go if anything, he should go out on this sort of a high.
Yeah, I mean it's tragic, right? It's obviously sad and tragic that his career ended in this match, and it's wrestling, so never say never, I guess. But at the same time, man, it's nobody's gonna forget it. Nobody's gonna forget the way he went out, and how quality this match was, and how it blended really their two styles so perfectly. It really almost felt like a hybrid of Okada Okada's pro wrestling versus Shibata's super extra strong style wrestling. I don't really know how to necessarily phrase that, but again, perfect blend. It's really really quality stuff. And again, I can see this finishing higher in the future.
Yeah. 18, Mitsuhiro Misawa versus Akira Taue, Champion Carnival Final from 95.
Yeah, I was kind of surprised this one jumped into the top 25. It finished 31 in 2019, which felt like a pretty good finish for it, to be honest. But it keeps going up. I also rated this one. I can't remember exactly where I had this. Somewhere in the sort of middle to back half of the list. It's great. It's Taue's rise.
Performance.
Yeah, it's his performance. His journey through the carnival that year, was really highly touted, and sort of reaching, in video game terms, the final boss at the end here in Misawa, and having just a really high drama, almost palpable kind of intensity match was, I think, in a lot of ways, Taue's, maybe greatest achievement, at least his greatest singles achievement. But I also think Misawa, again, much like the last match, Misawa deserves a lot of credit here. He brings a lot to the table in being that ace that somebody like Taue can have this single star making performance. And obviously Taue has a very rich career before this, so that might be oversimplifying things a little bit. But this is the singles match that stands out for him for sure.
Yeah, and one of the big things about all Japan, the happy accidents with the orbital bone injury.
Yeah, those kinds of things, you almost feel bad about liking what they bring to the match, but it's wrestling. I think there's a kind of cathartic bloodthirstiness to it, that when those little accidents happen, when things like that happen and people get through it, and then they're okay on the other side of it, it's you can start to feel a little bit better about liking it, I guess.
Yeah.
In this particular case, it's kind of the same thing with the Morishima Danielson match in Ring of Honor.
Or the
Where
Shibata Okada match, like the last.
Yeah, the Shibata Okada one still bothers me a little bit, because again, Shibata's career's over. That's a podcast for another time to get into sort of how we deal with those things. But yeah, those when it gets real and it brings something to the match, it's really hard to not let that match elevate in your mind.
Yeah. Now to something totally different. High, moving up 10 spots. Rey Mysterio versus Eddie Guerrero. Mass versus title, Cruiserweight title. WCW 1997, Halloween Havoc.
Yeah, total classic. What can you say about it? Like, beautiful match. Brings something to the WCW landscape that I think, even though there was a cruiserweight division there, this elevated everything to something that no two other wrestlers, I think, could pull off, is this level of violence and art and drama and storytelling. These two again. I think some of these great matches are all about chemistry, and these two had great chemistry. And I'm happy to see Eddie in a top 25 match. Particularly, is one of my absolute favorites, and he had a different match that landed in my top 10. That I just like to see great wrestlers get their due in these kinds of things. It's nice to see.
Yeah, it's something where Eddie was really good at what he did. Number 16, Stan Hansen versus Andre the Giant, the New Japan match. This match is freaking awesome.
Oh man.
Again, just two big badasses just going at it.
Yeah, so like all the cliches have been thrown out, the best Hoss fight, the best Godzilla versus King Kong match. I always joke it's like watching Stan Hansen pretend to be Ricky Morton in this match because, he's the little guy. And if you're somebody who's watched a lot of like old WWF, WWE, and you see Andre as this big lumbering limited wrestler, go watch this and go watch Andre from this era. He's phenomenal. He's a big dude, but he's mobile, and these two just run into each other and beat the hell out of each other in the best way possible. It's chaos, right? I really like when matches feel like there's a real sense of unhinged chaos in them. And this match is that from essentially start to finish. Even when they're doing some mat work, this match feels like it's off the rails from the beginning.
Um, Kiyoshi Tamura versus Tsuyoshi Koshaka. Koshaka? Is
Mm-hmm.
that Kosaka?
Kosaka.
Uh, yeah. Yeah, I was afraid to say that wrong. 707 points, 10 ballots, 2019 finished 17th.
Yeah, so this one crept up a little bit. This is my highest rated shoot match. Just, this is to me the highest form of storytelling in a shoot wrestling match. It's really, really complex. There's I don't think there's any rope breaks in the first half of this match. And then the urgency with which they are scrambling for the ropes really drives home how dangerous the holds are and how much peril and pain they're in. I think it's just physical storytelling at its absolute best. I was high vote on this one at 6, and this one kind of floats around the back half of my top 10 a little bit. I made some last minute changes, so this is probably one that's not dropping out of the top 10 for me anytime soon. It could move up a few, it could move down a few, but this is top notch pro wrestling in every sense of the word, in my opinion.
Yes. I gotta check out this match. Well, once the generator says we can see that, we'll see it.
Yeah,
Um, number, yeah, it's good.
yeah. Well, I was gonna say that the good thing about kind of shoot matches is they're not long. Like even if they go long, they're not. You don't get these like hour long matches. There's usually like a 20 to 30 minute time limit. So I think they're digestible matches. I think, and all of them because of the style are you can watch them in a vacuum. You don't need a lot of backstory to figure out why they're great.
Yeah. Number 14, Ric Flair versus Ricky Steamboat. Out of the top 10,
Oh
our first boot of the top 10, and Cap's not happy about it.
yeah, well, it's it actually my vote wouldn't have made much difference, but it fell out of my top 10 at the last minute, and actually a shoot match that I was the only voter on, which is depressing to me, is what knocked it out. So this is another one that's canonical. It's great. This is fantastic wrestling. It's urgent and tight, but I love the aesthetic of these two. I really like good aesthetics in matches where like you can kind of feel the characters as they walk out and get a sense for why they don't like each other. And Family Man Ricky Steamboat with his kids or this kid and his wife, and then Playboy Ric Flair in this 1980s WCW dark, vaguely grungy setting is just it's what I think of when I think of pro wrestling from my childhood. So this is fantastic wrestling. It could easily jump back into my top 10 and I think jump back into the overall top 10. But seeing this drop was a little bit disappointing, but ultimately we'll talk about when we get to the top 10. I was happy it made room for something myself.
Number 13, Kenta Kobashi versus Mitsuhiro Misawa from Noah 3103, and this match. What can you say about these two? That's not been already said.
Yeah, I think they wound up with 3 or 4 singles matches in the top 100. I can't remember off the top of my head. Last year I had in my top 100. This year I have 3. They're great. They're great together. Their chemistry was unparalleled, I think, in some ways. This was Kobashi taking the torch, whether Misawa liked it or not. This is also, Noah Kobashi is what I call like Death Wish Kobashi. He's out there doing things that a man his size and age should not be doing, and they absolutely wreck one another in this match. It's wonderful. This is great. This is a great match. Another one that if people have not checked out, 2000s Noah, this is a good way to get into it.
Yeah, this is the perfect introduction to 2000s Noah, in my opinion. Number 12, Stan Hansen and Terry Gordy versus Tenryu Genichiro and Toshiaki Kawada from the Real World Tag League Final 1988. Finished 14th, so it crept up a little bit last year. 773 points, 11 ballots, and high vote was 9th.
So I actually rewatched this morning. There were a couple matches that, knowing I was coming on, we're going to talk about the top 25. There were a couple I hadn't seen for a really long time, and I wanted to just kind of jog my memory a little bit of them. This was one of those matches, and I immediately was reminded of how much I love this and why I love it. It's wonderful storytelling. I think, if you're familiar with 90s All Japan, there's lots of sort of these woven narratives in their tag matches where all 4 men have they have chemistry in some way, shape, or form. There's different dynamics. And this has all of that, but like with an 80s grittiness and meanness to it. Terry Gordy and Stan Hansen are in there to hurt people. Stan Hansen is insanely stiff in this match, and poor Kawada takes a lot of it. Tenryu takes a great deal of it, but Tenryu is just the old grizzled veteran that is going to power through everything. Perhaps a top 10 selling performance from Kawada here. I think in some ways a kind of star-making performance from him. And Gordy and Hansen show why they're one of my favorite tag teams ever. They're fantastic. And this also has that cool aesthetic I was talking about. Hansen and Gordy come out in their dress, both of them sort of dressed like Stan Hansen is normally dressed, in the vest and the cowboy hat. Just 2 big hosses coming in to fight the Japanese heroes in this particular case. Really, really great match start to finish. And again, not a particularly long match. They get a lot done in a relatively short amount of time for these big epics.
Yeah. It's a match I gotta see. This is something that's so up my alley.
Yeah, if this is another. I mean, I'm gonna obviously, these are the top matches ever according to our little project, so I'm recommending all of them. But this is another one, especially if you like Stan Hansen. Stan Hansen's one of my all time, probably number 3 for me, and he has a great performance. And Terry Gordy, this is where Terry Gordy's meant to be. Terry Gordy getting to just lay it into people is the best version of Terry Gordy.
Yes, that is the best version of Terry Gordy. I saw the Terry Gordy Killer Kahn match.
Oh, and God, so good.
That for today's episode, and it's so gosh darn good.
Yeah, that's one that if just a quick side, if you asked me to do this maybe like 5 years ago, that match probably would have been in my top 50. And again, when it's no knock at all that fell out of my top 100. We're talking about the 0.001% of matches I've ever seen. But that is a real high quality match. And I think if you like that match, you're going to really like this version of Terry Gordy as well.
11, Mankind Shawn Michaels in your house mind games. What can be said about this match that hasn't been said already? This match is so good, and it's so woven together with the storylines, yet wrestles so beautifully.
Yeah, this is a massive finish for this match, right? Like this finished 23 in 2019,
Yeah,
and I believe Micro Statistics had it pretty high
and number
then.
two.
Yeah, he had it number 2 this year. I can't remember if he had it 1 last year or if um, he had it really high, and it sort of put it on a lot of people's radar. I think that's a great thing about this project is I don't think there's not a lot of people actively advocating that people vote for matches, but there is people putting matches on everyone's radar and giving us reasons to go back and watch and rewatch with fresh sets of eyes. And I think this match gets a little bump because of that, and deserve it. I think it's a great, great, great match. I think almost every ace from the U.S. in the 90s owes Mick Foley a debt of gratitude. If he wasn't everybody's best opponent, he was at least a very unique opponent that is memorable. And same thing here with Shawn Michaels. He brings out a different side in Shawn. My whole thing is I just don't like the finish.
Yeah,
It's
the
a
finish sucks,
it's
but
a and I'm a finish guy. Like oftentimes a finish that rubs me the wrong way can really pull a match down. And this is to me a top 100 match, top 50 match for 80% of it, and then that finish pulls it out of my list personally. But it's again totally deserving of being on the list, totally deserving of a spot, and I'm glad to see it getting some recognition. But this is a pretty high finish in my opinion for this match.
speaking of not high finishes, I think this match deserves a lot of credit. Sangre Chicana versus MS1, hair versus hair, 923.83 EMLLL. And this is the match that made me get Lucha.
Awesome, yeah. So
Hatred.
this was my number one match by default until I submitted my first ballot. In 2019, it was overtaken at the very last minute when I watched this and the other match back to back. We'll talk about that match in a little while, but it's everything I want in my wrestling. It's the cliche is getting making every move count. Every single movement counts here. It's getting the most out of the least in terms of moves with a Z. It's just simple hatred brawling. It starts with MS1 beating Sangre Chicana bloody in front of his own mother. It's wonderful, and it's to me self-evidently great, and I think it is a match that can help if you're having trouble with lucha brawls, which I think some people can have a little bit of trouble getting into the style. This is a match that I think can really help people translate their love of wrestling to lucha a little bit, because this is great. This is as good as it gets. This is my number 2 match. I can't see it dropping out of number 2 anywhere in the near future, but we'll see. But this is as good as it gets, man.
Yeah, this is as good as it gets. This is something where it's bloody, it's gritty, it's vicious, it's
Yeah,
urgent.
yeah, and I'll say, this made me realize one of my favorite moves in all of wrestling history is Sangre Chicana's haymaker left hand. Like, watch this match and just watch where he hits that haymaker left, and how much joy there is in just one move, one simple move. His timing is incredible, and it's not just this match. He has quite a few that got some votes. He's a really great wrestler.
Yeah, he's on the Observer Hall of Fame ballot this year.
Oh, the fact that he's not in is a crime.
Number not, at least the Mexico ballot's not that crowded anymore. So Let's
Yeah.
pray. Let's pray. Number 9, Jun Akiyama and Mitsuhiro Misawa versus Toshiaki Kawada and Akira Taue. Real World Tag League Finals, All Japan '96. This is one of the few World Tag League Finals I haven't seen.
Oh yeah. Another one. Actually, this is the other one I watched this morning, just because I haven't watched it in so long. And after I do my ballot, I take some notes on things I want to make sure I rewatch, and because I go down through it by match and kind of do a little stock on how I feel about my ballot after I submit it. And I just realized I hadn't seen this match in a really long time, so it was on my list to rewatch anyway. I rewatched it this morning. It's great. It's got everything you expect out of these, these '90s All Japan tag matches. It's got the drama. This is, I think, a really good Misawa performance. He takes an absolute beating in the sort of body of this match and the meat and potatoes of this match, and it's a great demonstration of the chemistry between Kawada and Taue. Their movements and transitions and saves are just top notch here. It's seamless. They make really great wrestling look absolutely effortless, and I think this is a really good example. And Jun Akiyama deserves all the credit in the world. He got what it meant to be a great wrestler so early in life, and
Yes.
he looks great here. Kobashi is one of my favorite wrestlers ever. Perhaps probably one or two to me. So it's unfair for him to like be compared to Kobashi, but he is the fifth pillar in every sense of the word.
Yeah, he is the fifth pillar, and I always refer to him as the fifth pillar, not as a disrespect, but as
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. He just wasn't there when the pillars were forming, right? When that sort of legend was forming, but he's absolutely deserved of a place amongst these sort of giants. And his career, the longevity of his career, he's still producing some really good quality wrestling, and that's really impressive, to be honest.
and he's been on the edge of the Observer Hall of Fame for the last 2 years, and I don't know how anybody's can see Jun Akiyama and say, "Whoa."
Yeah, I often don't really understand that process. I mean, I know that there's a lot of it's a logistical thing, and there's a matter of like, you can only vote for so many. I almost always I don't keep up with it as much as I used to, because I almost would always find myself just frustrated with who's not in. But
Right.
but yeah, Jun Akiyama is 100% going to be in there one day. He deserves it. He's a absolutely fantastic wrestler, and he's really great here. His his contribution brings a lot to the emotional investment in this match. He's really, really, really good in that department here.
A match that you don't expect to have people to have chemistry, but they do. Um, Kobashi and Hansen. My God, this match is awesome.
Yeah,
Again,
good.
like Hansen being the big bully and like Kobashi selling it. It's just fantastic.
This is, to me, the best pairing in wrestling history. I think Kobashi and Hansen are absolutely made for one another. I can kind of see where you mean, like, you wouldn't necessarily expect them to have great chemistry. I think Hansen had sort of a mixed bag of chemistry with the other pillars. This Kobashi is one of the best fired up baby faces ever in wrestling, and Hansen makes him earn absolutely everything in every match they have. So this is the big famous one from them. This is the one, I think, this is their best chapter. This was my number 3 vote. I was the high vote on this. They end up with 4 matches on my ballot. I watched all of their available singles matches between last year's ballot and this year's ballot, and not only did it make me realize they have other absolute classics out there, it made me appreciate this match more because it added to the context of this match. So I have nothing but time for Kobashi and Hansen. I could watch those two wrestle all day long. I think they're made for one another, and I think this is the best version of controlled chaos I can imagine. They're really good. I think the good thing is Hansen kind of he's known for being reactionary. Like he talks about how he doesn't really plan things; he just sort of reacts to what his opponents do. I think he brings that element of sort of organic violence to these '90s All Japan matches, where they don't ever feel cooperative, but there's an orchestrated element to them. Where Hansen throws all that out the window and just is a whirlwind of violence, and I think that's really good for Kobashi here.
Speaking of Kenta Kobashi, number 7, one of my favorite matches of all time. I recently watched this and I loved it as much as I loved anything in the world. Kenta Kobashi, Tsuyoshi Kikuchi versus Dan Crawford and Doug Furnas. This is just prime crowd heat at its very best.
Yeah, face melting heat. Like this crowd is white hot. This got a number 1 vote. It has wound up on 14 ballots, which is the second most. Quite a few matches have wound up on 14 ballots, and only one match wound up on 15. This is great wrestling. It's there's a handful of matches that are sort of as close as it gets to objective, agreed upon greatness, and this is it. I was, for a really long time, a little bit lower on this match than everybody else. All that meant was that it was like in the back half of my list. And recently, in the past like maybe 6 months, I watched it again, and I don't know, something clicked. Something just clicks sometimes when you watch matches, even if you've watched them a couple times. Something clicked, and I just sort of got why this match deserved to be a good bit higher. And so it finished in my top 50, I believe, this year. It's wonderful, wonderful match. It finished 10 last year, finishes 7 this year. It's objectively great.
Yes, and it's one of those things where it's like Duke versus North Carolina at Cameron Indoor Stadium. It's something where these teams go back and forth, but the home court advantage brings Kobashi and Kikuchi the titles.
Yep, absolutely. That's a good analogy.
Number 6, Jumbo Tsuruta versus Genichiro Tenryu, 6'5", 89.
Have you seen this one?
I've seen this, but not in a while.
Sure.
I think this is like Jumbo. This is like Jumbo's like best performance.
Yeah, this is again kind of commonly accepted as the best. I think a lot of people would say this is the best '80s Japanese match. This is the best '80s All Japan match. Kind of Jumbo's crowning performance as the ace. It's fantastic. It's ahead of its time. I think it sets the stage for what All Japan would become in the '90s. There's just such chemistry and fluidity between them, but I don't think they lose any of that malice and hatred. There's, Tenryu is always going to make sure that exists, and I think Jumbo has an underrated sort of charisma in that way too, where especially when he's in with somebody like Tenryu, you can see he's game to bring that dynamic charisma and anger to his matches. And this is just great. It's fantastic. It wound up in my top 20. I'm a little surprised almost that this doesn't wind up higher. Like, it seems weird to think number 6 is low, but it finished 5 last year, and I was a little surprised it didn't sort of hover around that 3 to 5 range this year. But again, nothing but praise for this match. It's near perfect for what it is.
Yeah, it's very good. I need to rewatch this match again, just to watch two of the best of all time just go at it.
Mm-hmm.
Number 5, Kobashi Misawa, 120-97, the first Puro match I've ever saw.
Yeah. So yeah. How do you first one you've ever saw? How do you feel about it? Is it a good spot for it?
I think it's an excellent spot for it. It introduces you. So this is my story with this match. Mm-hmm. After Misawa died, I'm like, people were like, this is one of the greatest wrestlers of all time, of course. I was 13 at the time, so So I'm like, who the heck is this Misawa guy? And why are they considering him the greatest wrestler ever? And I haven't seen him. I got why Misawa and Kobashi are considered two of the greatest wrestlers of all time after seeing it.
Yeah, I think it's commonly accepted or at least in a lot of circles as the best version of this match that they've had. They have a lot of great matches, but I think this one's the top one. I think it adds a layer to what they normally do because of the sort of dueling arm work and how they just integrate all of the little details into their match. This is, 90s All Japan gets kind of maligned by its critics for being excessive, but I really think the devil's in the details with what these guys do, and this has a lot of great detail and patience, and it's, again, to me, the best version of what they do. I have it at number 4. It gets a high vote of number 2. I'm a little surprised it didn't get any number 1 votes, but we'll obviously probably talk about that in a little while. But again, just fantastic match between two guys who are just work magic together. They're fantastic together.
Yeah, it's just something where you just sit there and every time you watch it, you're in awe.
Yeah, it goes by so fast. It flies by. It's not a short match, but it does not feel like you're investing that much time because it's so digestible and it's just a joy.
Number 4, the highest rated American match. Bret Hart versus Steve Austin submission match. WrestleMania 13.
Big jump for this.
Considerable jump. Considerable jump.
From 9 to 4 this year, which it's only 5 spots, but once you get in this rarefied air, it's kind of hard to move around. I'm happy to see this. This is a match I like more every time I watch it. Probably I've watched it a few times, thinking, am I high on this because of nostalgia? Am I high on this because WWE pushes their narrative so hard, and we're kind of, at least because I still expose myself to modern American wrestling, I just sort of see those narratives and hear those narratives, but every time it lives up. It's perfect. It's again, high degree of difficulty, the double turn. It's Bret Hart's, I think, masterpiece, his opus, but Austin giving everything he has to become a star here, and it works, obviously. This launched a generation of wrestling, and then in turn a generation of wrestling fans. I don't think you can really understate how important and great this match is.
Yeah. And I don't have that nostalgic connection to it because I'm 24.
Yeah.
This match is still freaking great.
Yeah.
This match is still one of the greatest matches of all time, no matter when you parachute in. If you have a nostalgic connection to it, if you don't have a nostalgic connection to it, this is just pro wrestling at its best.
Yeah.
And there are 3 matches I would consider for number 1. This is one of them, the Kobashi Kikuchi Corvette Furnace match is one, and then the one that finished at number 1 is number 1 contender.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think that brings up a good point about like what makes great wrestling. And for me, that sort of being able to watch it regardless of when you were born and like whether you have a nostalgic connection or understand the story, being able to just drop into a match and watch it in a vacuum and still see how great it is, I think is a quality of almost all great wrestling. There can be great wrestling that you have to watch within the storyline, and that there's a place for that in wrestling overall. But I think in terms of this way of watching and thinking about wrestling, I really value that ability to watch it regardless of whether you know anything about it, regardless of whether you're connected to the product at the time, and get its greatness. I think that's high praise for a match.
Yeah, it's just Bret Hart's magnum opus.
Yep.
And then Austin is right there with him, every step of the way.
Yeah, and the visual, right? I think visuals are so important in wrestling and giving
The
you
blood.
those moments within wrestling for me where a match is great and then something happens in the match and you just feel the match elevate in quality. There usually has to be something like that in a match, and I think obviously the blood and the him being in the sharpshooter for as long as he was is one of those moments that's not just iconic for the match, but it's iconic in wrestling as a whole, obviously. Almost everybody knows that if you're an American wrestling fan. It's, again, incredible degree of difficulty, and both men deserve all the credit in the world for producing this.
Yeah. Number 2, Akira Hokuto versus Shinobu Kandori.
Oh, did we skip number
I
three?
know, number 3. Number 3, I was looking at number 2. My bad. Number 3, Misawa versus Kawada. 6'3", We don't need to say the promotion
Yeah, no.
because we know which promotion it is.
Yeah, this was introduced to me as the greatest wrestling match ever when I first watched it. I don't know if that helped or hurt it because I don't think I've ever felt like it was, but I still feel like it's one of the greatest wrestling matches ever. It's, again, this match has been discussed to death, and its greatness is probably not really in doubt. I'm a little surprised it didn't get a number 1 vote, but it got a number 2 vote on 14 ballots. It finished number 2 last year. It's, commonly accepted as one of the greatest matches ever, and there's a reason for that. It's violent, it's careful, it's a really nuanced physical storytelling that you don't often see, even for this time period in this promotion. So I think it does stand out from the crowd a little bit, and I totally understand why people have it even higher than I do. I have it sort of middle of the pack, in the top 50, but I think I have it. Actually, I have it 28. So, not a bad showing for it at all. But yeah, great match that I'm not going to be able to say anything that more articulate fans haven't said before me.
Yeah, I can't say any. I feel like what's been said about this match has already been said.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it is one of the greatest wrestling matches ever. It is. It just really is. But part of you wanna be against saying it's the greatest because it's introduced as the greatest.
Yeah. It's not even like being against it. It is just that when somebody says to you, this is the greatest thing ever, the standards don't get any higher. There's no place to go but down. And so, I don't know that it would have changed. It was a long, long time ago, so I don't think that would change where it is on my ballot now. But I totally understand why this enjoys that honor in some wrestling circles and over time and even today. But for me, it's, this is silly to say for a match that finished 28th ever for me. It's a all-time match, but not the greatest match ever. That's kind of all I could say about it for myself.
Number 2, your greatest match ever. Akira Hokuto versus Shinobu Kandori. AJW. 4-2-93. You're the high vote on it, but 15 ballots, almost on every ballot. Number
Yeah.
2019 finish 4th.
So have you seen this one?
I've seen the clips.
Okay. I'll try not to gush over this too much. I think this is just the greatest wrestling match ever, and I feel really confident in it now. Like I said, 2019, this jumped Sangre Chicana versus MS1 for the number 1 spot
Is this
for
the
me.
dog collar match?
This one, no.
No, this is the one where Hokuto beats the living
So
crap.
they both beat the hell out of each other in this match. So the chain match you're probably thinking of is the Bull Nakano versus Shinobu Kandori match.
Oh yeah, I've seen more of the chain match than this match per
Okay,
se.
yeah. So that is also one of my favorite matches and a match I would highly recommend. If it were a favorites list, that could be number 1 for me. This is to me just pure wrestling drama in its best form. It's the only match I can think of that I'm like physically exhausted watching. I get so invested and wrapped up in the story they're telling that when I finish it, I almost feel like tired after. It's like when you watch a really good movie or a movie with just like the highest quality acting and you kind of lose yourself in that. It kind of feels that way to me. Um, I think Hokuto is the perfect protagonist in this match. She is an all-time ace performer, and Kandori presents a threat and a hurdle for her that nobody else could. Not, Bull Nakano could not do it. Dump Matsumoto could not do it. Aja Kong could not do it. Kandori is a shooter. She's dangerous. She's mean. She's cerebral. This starts with a spot where Hokuto's head gets tombstone or pile driven into a table, and they cut.
Oh yeah,
table.
I've seen that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a dent in the table, and Hokuto's a bloody mess. So like just setting the
I've seen this
stage.
match. Yeah. Now that you're
Yeah, and so it's it goes from there. It only builds from there. It sort of hits this moment where you just realize they are just throwing bombs at each other to try to not just keep each other down, but to end one another permanently. It's highest form of drama. I could talk about it for days. It's a match that I think is it's the only match to get onto 15 ballots. It has one number one vote, and that is for me. The match it lost to has, let me count really quick, 8 number one votes. And this match still only lost by, roughly 40 points.
yeah.
So I think it speaks to how highly this match is thought of, not by just me, but by a lot of people. And I was really happy to see this get the number 2 nod. I didn't really think it was going to get number 1, but I was happy to see it get number 2. And a match I can't recommend enough. It's out there. It's on YouTube. People should be watching this match. It's the best as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah. Number 1, 6,995. I can't say anything more than that.
Yeah, that's all you need.
Here are the participants: Kenta, Kobashi, Misawa versus Toshiaki Kawada versus Akira Taui. Not versus Akira Taui. That would be weird. This match. What has not been said about this match? This match is just.
It's the default number 1. I mean, it finished number 1 in 2019. It finished number 1 this time. Half of the ballots submitted had this match as number 1. It's, unless there is a kind of, I believe I said on the board, unless there's a kind of sea change in voting on this, it's going to be number 1. It's there are people who don't like All Japan as much, and so it didn't end up on as many ballots. It only ended up on 13 ballots. Only, I say, but it's it's great. There's nothing to be said. It's the highest form of violence and drama combined that I can think of. When Kobashi throws himself on Misawa to save him from more beating, you look at it, you're like, oh, this is the greatest wrestling match ever. I can't believe it. I can't believe I'm watching that. It's wonderful. It's a wonderful wrestling match. It's in my top 5. I believe I had it at number 4, number 5 this year. And, that's not a knock on the match at all. That's just sort of where I have it amongst the absolute elite matches. It's great. It's self-evidently awesome.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it would be my number 1 if I voted. Like seriously,
Mm-hmm.
I would be remiss if I didn't. But I have a lot of blind spots, so I feel like I'm not comfortable. But it's like this match right here. You have the highest element of drama, and it's sort of like this is as good as pro wrestling can get in a ring, without promos, without anything like that. You don't need a backstory. You can just enjoy this match in a vacuum. But the backstory does help.
Yeah, for sure. It's a match that, like I said before, I like matches where you don't have to have all that, but sort of even just watching kind of all Japan wrestling in the 90s and having a sense of the dynamics, I think helps a little. But you're right. You don't have to know anything. The Kawada and Taue are mean and they are violent, and Misawa and Kobashi are giving everything they could possibly give to beat them, and that's as simple as it is. That's as simple as it needs to be. They're the exchanges are snug and visceral, and the drama in the way that everybody is selling everything, and the way they're selling not just the work done on them, but the work done on their partners is, I think, what sets this match apart a little bit. Just great wrestling, just highest end you could possibly get.
A match that I saw that finished 105 and went to 43. Eddie Guerrero versus John Bradshaw Layfield. That was the most shocking thing to me. But I know this is a great match. I know this is a really, really great match.
Yeah, I was surprised too, but I'm the high vote on that match. I've been championing that match for a while. That finished 8 for me. It is. I was really shocked that jumped not just into the top 100, but into the top 50. But I think to me, it is the best individual performance ever. I think Eddie Guerrero's performance in that match is the best individual wrestling performance I've ever seen. It has a lot of things I shouldn't like. I don't like screwy finishes that much. In terms of the true elite matches, I don't like ref shenanigans that much. I don't like JBL laying in a headlock that much. But despite all of that, that match always ends up being something that is greater than the sum of its parts. And I think it reflects I don't want to get too deep in the weeds with this, but I think it reflects some real world political dynamics in a way that speak to me in interesting ways and make it that much more meaningful. And it reflects that Eddie is a champion in a kind of rough time for the WWE, and he is, by all accounts, that personally and really put it on his own shoulders, and perhaps unhealthy ways. As you see, he blades entirely too hard, and to try to make everything better, to try to really push the product. And I think you see a lot of outside of the ring things performed inside the ring, kind of as subtext, and that makes that match all the better to me. But it's, again, in a vacuum, an amazing match. I showed it to a friend who's just sort of kind of into wrestling, and every once in a while gets in the mood to watch wrestling with me. And before the pandemic, he came over and we watched a handful of matches, and that was one I showed him, and he loved it. He was like, "That's incredible. That's one of the most incredible wrestling matches I've ever seen." So I think it holds up in a lot of different circumstances. But I'm glad you brought that one up, because I love that match so much, and I totally think it deserves the spot. I'm one of its greatest champions.
Yeah, that was the one I saw in the list that sort of shocked me a little bit, but
Yeah.
but I haven't seen any from World of Sport or a lot of lucha, so I can't really comment. The Bolton Nakano Shinobu Kandori chain match, which finished 83rd,
Mm-hmm.
and you were the high vote on that. You were 19th.
Yeah, another one I'll probably always be the high vote on that one. It's, again, one of my favorite matches, and this is me being a total mark for Kandori, to be honest. I think she brings something to matches that is singular in all of wrestling. I believe Elliot's kind of compared her to Brock Lesnar in terms of the danger and sense of danger that she brings. And I can see that, but I just think she's different. She's a mean shooter. She's not a big woman. She doesn't tower over people like Aja Kong might, but she is the malice that she brings is palpable, and her and Nakano just beat the crap out of each other in that match, and it's the best two people tied together match I've ever seen. And I think that's hard to do, but they're wonderful in that match, and it really shows to me why both of them are really high top level performers. Not just They aren't just two of the best female performers ever; they are two of the best wrestlers ever.
Yeah, plugs before we go. You have any plugs?
I guess my Twitter account. I haven't been on wrestling Twitter in a minute since I've been doing the project, and it's been kind of occupying my time. But at Markout Mountain is my wrestling Twitter account.
And your blog.
Yeah, and unfortunately we haven't been keeping that up as well. It's a friend of mine. We both have been working on that. I need to move to start putting my GWE stuff over, or GME stuff over there from this year, but I'd like to get back to doing that, to blogging a little bit more about wrestling. But that is WordPress Markout Mountain, pretty easy to find. And that's a friend of mine, Adam, who's a really brilliant wrestling fan who doesn't post as much on forums, but he's a really great wrestling mind and very knowledgeable, and has been really influential in getting me into a lot of the stuff that wound up on my list.
Yes, that's very cool that you're still like doing that.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna do the and exit. You can follow me on Twitter at DJD and you can follow the show. I'm gonna make a Facebook page for the show and do all that later, know.
Awesome.
And link it up, So I just wanted to thank Cap for coming on today.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. It was a lot of fun this morning.
Yeah, I could talk about this stuff.
I know.
Yeah, let me stop the recording now. And welcome to Great Match Generator. Thank you to Cap for coming on to the show today and talking about the top 25 of the 2020 list of greatest matches ever. That was the segment you heard before we go into the 4 matches we have today here. It was a really interesting list because some of the matches, like, it doesn't stay the same. Even though number 1 stayed the same, a lot of the matches sort of shuffled with another year's old lens. But I'm here with Beast Mike.
Yep. It's a very nice Tuesday afternoon. It's been that for 17 minutes. We got a couple. We got some good flows here. We got some flows from the 80s and some flows from one flow from the aughts, and then one flow from the 20 from last decade. So
2010. So it's going to be a good show. We go in date order here. So let's go with Terry Gordy versus Kahn first. This was the number 1 overall match in the Death Valley Driver Video Review 80s Texas set, and I could see why.
No, this was good. This was a good, solid physical match with two dudes who know how to brawl. The crowd and impact of it was also very productive and solid. I dig it. I was digging this match finish.
I just think Terry Gordy's just a violent man.
Yeah.
And Kahn was just right with him. This was the Terry Gordy show here. Just Terry Gordy was just nasty. He was just brawling with attrition and urgency. And Kahn was right there with him.
Yeah, I love that he kept up with him. I love that he kept up the pace, kept up the physicality. I think part of that is Gordy kind of feeds off that. It kind of feeds off of the, like, I'm gonna throw a punch and let's see how hard you can throw it back at me. And I kind of think Gordy fed off of that, and I like that about him.
Yeah, and I've seen a few Gordy matches. Gordy's at his best when he really strikes on his violent side.
Yes, that definitely did strike. That definitely was struck a chord with me in a particular match.
Yeah, and at times it almost got to the point where it was uncomfortable, but it wasn't uncomfortable. Like you're like, man, Killer Kahn's really busted here.
Yeah.
Open. That was a great blade job, by the way.
Yes.
Blade job added a lot to the match.
Definitely, yeah. I think adding the color to it, I think was a very good. That was a good look. It kind of really, except it made everyone kind of understand how violent and vicious Gordy can be if you give him the time to do it. You give him the time to go on the offensive. I think that was a good. That made a whole lot of sense. There's some times where blood doesn't make sense. This blood made sense. This blood was very, very. It absolutely was a good look.
And I like the angle at the end where Akbar comes in and tries to interfere, and now missing link, and Kerry was fighting side by side. I liked all that stuff. It's just pure 80s pro wrestling.
Yeah, no, definitely. Yeah. You got 80s wrestling is kind of like the you got your technical stuff, but then when you on the other side of it, you got your violent stuff. And when the violent stuff really kicks in, ooh, it can get gross. It can definitely get gross.
Gross, and it can get very violent. I really liked this match. I thought Kerry played well as the special guest referee. Overall, just a very good match.
Yeah.
As a Freebird and a Von Erich shakes hands to take out a killer enemy and Killer Kahn. It's an what would you rate this at? 4.5?
Yeah, 4.25, 4.5. I'll probably go 4.25 with it. I think it was a very productive match, from start to finish. The blood, I don't think, got in the way of it. I think it was just an overall solid deal.
I thought I'm a little higher on this thing. I'm at 4.5. I love brawls like this. It's unique. It's something where it's gritty. It's down and dirty. It's awesome. But next match we have Ric Flair versus Kevin Von Erich, which is the total opposite from the same promotion.
Remember when I said technical stuff? How we got a difference between violent stuff in the 80s and the tech stuff in the 80s. This is certainly one of the latter. And as we know, Ric Flair is one of the best wrestlers, one of the best technical wrestlers ever. And Kevin Von Erich can go bar for bar with Flair in terms of, at least he could have gone bar for bar with Flair. Now, what's interesting to me about this is that this was in Texas Stadium, the old school Texas Stadium with the roof, when obviously the Cowboys played. And as we know, the Dallas area is Von Erich country. When Von Erich hit the scene, the crowd was hyped. The crowd was hyped for KVN. It was that was it. That was some energy and some juice to it.
Yeah. I thought Kevin was very relentless in this match.
Yes.
I thought he was very, very poised and very calm for the moment. It wasn't too big for him.
Oh, no, he was ready for this life. He was absolutely ready for this.
It had a sense of urgency, which it's something I harp on a lot on these first 4 episodes, but something I really love in my wrestling now. It's like if you don't have the urgency to kick the guy's ass, then
you done something wrong.
That's something I'm very passionate about pro wrestling. It's just like the sense of urgency inside the ring, and it's something I I do want to talk about the Balor O'Reilly match later.
Yeah.
Because that was that should be nominated for this project too. Because
Woo! I love that was dope. The Balor, and we knew it was gonna be dope too with Finn and Kyle. We knew the match was gonna be good.
yes, but more about this Flair. That Flair flop into the other ring. Oh my god. Flair's selling is so good.
Flair's so good. Yes, Flair's so he is a brilliant seller. He absolutely is a brilliant seller. Kevin wrestling with the bare feet is something that's also very interesting.
And I was watching this with Greg, and Greg's not on the show today, but Greg was like, "How am I supposed to take this seriously when he harps?" I think Greg harps on the fact that there are hypocrisies.
Okay.
With the way Jim Cornette views things,
Right.
versus the way we view things, and it's like I agree with Cornette a lot of the time, but not all the time. When it comes to sense of urgency, like when it comes to like it doesn't need to be rocket science.
No, there's some matches where you just have to get lost in the match, and that's what I try to do when I watch wrestling. I try to like, okay, I get some of the storylines, I get it, I understand it, but it's like, let's just get lost in the match to see how it goes. Like if the match is dope, the storyline doesn't really matter. As long as the wrestling's dope, it'll work.
Me and Cap were talking about like we get lost in the actual match, and what makes a match great is anybody could parachute in and know the story.
Right.
I don't need all these intricate storylines like The Fiend or like, and I've been pretty consistent on like my hatred of like silly gimmicks and stuff like that because it's just
you want to keep it simple. You want to keep it simple. Get down to the wrestling.
Yes,
and I hear you though, and I hear you, and I can agree with that. Like there are some instances where okay, and that storyline makes sense, i.e. Retribution, for example. Like I'm kind of wishy-washy on them because it's like, you're just attacking just for the sake of attacking. But now that you actually have a face to it, like what they did with Mustafa Ali last night, you got a face to it. Now we actually could get somewhere with this. So that's why I was, at least with the Dark Order, their point was clear. Their point was clear. Get the AEW World Title. Their point was initially clear, and then now they got the TNT title. So fine. So it makes sense.
Wrestling fans don't understand it. Things take time and urgency, and
right.
And
I just wanted to have a point. Is what I'm saying.
I get that you want to have a point, but some way people tell stories is they don't tell you the point right away.
Yes.
They didn't tell you the point right away with Retribution, but
now they're getting to it, or at least they're starting it.
This is just two guys wanting to prove who's better.
Yes, yeah, definitely, and you get the sense of Von Erich kind of trying to be the hero for his people in Texas, and Flair kind of being the outsider and trying to prove that I'm coming from the North and I'm still better than you. Like the North style is better than the South. South flows. So I get that. And Flair obviously being one of the best, one of the greatest ever, and Kevin is too. But I like how this worked. I like how this just naturally clicked.
I thought Kevin was really shined in this match. Not to say that Flair didn't, but I never realized. I always thought Kerry was the
was the best of the Von Erichs.
Best of Von Erichs, but I'm like Superstar Sleaze on the porn, man. I'm like, Kevin Von Erich's one of the most underrated ass kickers of all time.
Yeah, really. Yeah,
like,
Kevin can brawl.
Comeback was one of the best babyface comebacks I've ever seen.
He can brawl and he can finish, and I think that is a really, it definitely does get overlooked. It absolutely does. Because yes, he's an absolute babyface in Texas. Like, as I mentioned before, the girls in the crowd were all over him once he came out. Like they had the security. They couldn't keep enough security to keep him away from the crowd that would have tried to reach out and grab him.
But this was gritty
it was
too.
unreal.
It got gritty once it went into the other ring.
Yeah, it did.
When Kevin hit the splash, when they started brawling on the outside, which led to the finish. And I wasn't even mad at the finish. That's the thing. You get so lost in it, you don't even get mad at the finish.
No. Yeah, no, that's true. Like, you're just like, oh, wow, this match is dope. Like the finish just comes off as surprising as opposed to upsetting. So, this was dope.
One match that finished in the top 10 that some people argue the finish hurt was Mankind versus Shawn Michaels, which finished 12th on the in the GME.
What, the In Your House match that they had?
Yeah, house match.
Yeah, okay.
It's absolutely one of the best matches of all time. But some people harp on the finish.
It's so underrated for both of their careers. Because both guys have had so many other classics with so many other guys. He lost in the pantheon of their careers.
Sort of leap it in terms of importance, but at the same time, when we get to it, it's a great freaking match.
It is. It actually is.
Next we go to all the way to 2000.
Mm-hmm.
And we had, in the year of Atlantis versus Viano, we also had this gem. Misawa versus Jun Akiyama. This was a gem.
It was very good. This match started out slow, and I think what's amazing to me is that the announcers really kind of they were kind of the conductors for people who weren't in the building. They kind of they brought the temp. They kind of kept the tempo at a nice even keel pace, and then we get about 10 minutes in, and then they start fighting on the outside with a pile driver, and so it brings it up a little bit, and then bring it down, and then they bring it right back up when they go to the outside again, and it becomes a full-on demolition derby pretty much the end, and the announcers really did a very good job of bringing the tempo up for everyone that's not in the building, and then the building did the rest for the match itself, for the wrestlers. And
I think what really elevated this match for me was the finishing sequence with starting with Misawa's knee that drew Akiyama's blood.
Mm-hmm.
I talk about happy accidents in All Japan Pro Wrestling and them happening often. Holy this draws blood, and Misawa is still the babyface in this.
Right.
And he accidentally drew blood, but he's still trying to work over it. And also June being forced to work over Misawa's neck.
Yeah. Well, all the with the suplexes,
Exploders.
You got the exploders in there, and then that killer one at the end. The one at the end was. What was that, like an exploder brainbuster kind of hybrid?
It's called a wrist clutch exploder.
Wrist clutch exploder, okay. It dropped it right on his head.
Yeah, it's just
straight on his head.
Like Misawa was trying to come back, and he couldn't.
Mm-hmm.
The overall arc of Misawa's career is when he comes back, boy, you're in for a fight.
Yep.
And Akiyama snuffed the flame out.
Yep. Yeah. This was there, and there were points before that closing sequence where it was doomed. It was doomed because there were Germans. It was countless amount. There was a bunch of Germans giving out, and then they had the. Yeah, it was wild. That was a wild finish. To the end. That was very entertaining. There was it like 3 straight exploders, and then that wrist clutch.
It was 3 straight exploders and a brainbuster, and then the
brainbuster. Yeah, right. The brainbuster. Then he kicked out, and then the wrist clutch to finish. It was Whew. They brought it.
It's just marvelous how you know this was really Akiyama's match, but
Yeah.
Misawa still shines. And we watched a considerable amount of Misawa in the first 3 episodes.
Yeah, I think he's been featured in all 3 in 3 out of 4, right?
All 4, I think.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, he's been
3
all
out of
4.
4.
Yeah, right. Because last week a lot of it was WWE, so I don't think he was in that one. So
No.
yeah, he was in the other one. So yeah, so he was in 3 out of 4.
I think Misawa Vixen's fan brought up the point he may be the least interesting of the 4 pillars, but
Okay.
still, if you're the least interesting, yeah, still elicit that kind of response. And
Captivating story. His matches all tell really good, captivating stories.
And I'm just in awe every time every not new because he died 10 years ago, but every new to me match I see of his, I'm like drawn to this guy because he is so effortless.
He is fluid, isn't he?
Yeah, it's so
he's straight up fluid and natural.
And not to say that the other 3 weren't. The other 3 men in the 4 pillars, and Akiyama is the 5th pillar. Let's just say it as it is. We were talking about it. He was just not around at the same. He did not grow up in the same time. He was like 2-3 years after.
But he came in and held it down pretty much.
Yeah. But he got this profession from the moment he's been in it, and he's still having great matches today. From 1992 to today, that's
almost 30 years.
That's 28 years of getting pro wrestling.
Mm-hmm. And not only getting it, but adapting to the times. Like adapting to how wrestling's changed over the years. Where wrestling is, as we talked about in the 80s, which is hybrid of tech stuff and brawling. And in the 90s, there's a little bit more of a show to it. And now the aughts, and then the aughts and 2020s now is about speed and athleticism. So we're getting the aughts teams in the 20s.
Hasn't changed his style that much. He just adapted like Jericho.
Right.
But I give Akiyama a lot more credit than I do Jericho because it's more high quality stuff in Akiyama's thing than Jericho in terms of matches and not terms of like character work. Because
this character where Jericho's easily the most adaptive character of all time. But yeah, I would say I could buy that.
It's just fan freaking tastic all around how these guys just constantly how these Ultraman matches get better with age, in my opinion.
It's a different breed. It's a different flow from what we're used to seeing with American style wrestling. I will say.
Yes. So our last match also features one Jun Akiyama in 2012. Versus Jun Akiyama and Kobashi versus Kensuke Sasaki and a young Mitsuhiro Kitamiya, who's now known as Masa Kitamiya. In Noah.
This was a very solid tag match. I like the pacing of it. I like the tags. I like the efficiency of the tags and how well they were used. I like sort of the combos that each team were doing towards the end, especially that chop and then the knee, the chop to the look like the throat, and then the knee to the face chop, which I think was the next to last pinfall attempt. I thought this was overall very solidly done. This tag match.
I think this match gets elevated by the fact that Kobashi and Akiyama were being bullies the entire time, and Sasaki was trying to stand up for his little buddy.
They definitely did play the heel role quite nicely.
And then this is from a promotion called Diamond Ring.
Okay. Yeah, but I did notice the promo there.
I think it was Sasaki's promotion.
Okay.
And it was just I loved the opening sequence of the match too, like the young lion trying to compete with two all-time legends and just failing.
Yes.
Like, you're not at our level.
And they probably showed him the door real quick.
And they showed him the door real quick and then Kobashi and Sasaki. What needs to be said about Kobashi and Sasaki? Nothing. They just chopped the crap out of each other.
It was a chop. It did turn into a chop fest. We got big time chops. We got the machine gun chops. Yeah, it did turn into a chop fest.
And then Kitamiya gets a comeback that the crowd was very invested in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was off a hot tag, and then he went right to work off the hot tag, wasn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. He was working off the hot tag, and he was rolling for a little bit before Kobashi just put him in his place.
Yep.
This is probably one of the ultimate examples of veteran young lion versus two grumpy people in that match. Superstar Slee says another word in his post that I can't say on radio, but yeah. It's just like that lariat to end. That was nasty.
It was. It definitely was.
And this was in 2012 too. Mm-hmm. Just as Okada was getting started with his run, and it's just incredible to me that these legends still kick so much ass.
They definitely do.
Yeah, I just freaking love pro wrestling like this, where it's telling an obvious story, but it's telling an obvious story well.
Obvious because you probably know what's gonna happen, but it's captivating enough to keep you interested. I'm with you on that one.
Yeah, yeah, so Kitamiya Fear to Akiyama. I just love the finishing sequence where the kid goes wild and then boom, the lariat.
Yeah,
I love that. And then Akiyama hit the spinning back chop. And then Kobashi hit the spinning back chop. I love how Kitamiya got too cocky and tried a burning lariat, and Kobashi sold it. Like, you're not doing that to me.
Yep.
I just think
that was a very nice way to do that. Yes, that absolutely was.
Yeah, I just think overall this match is very good. I just think it's incredible. I gave this 4.5 stars.
I will go. Yeah, I'll go 4.5 on both of the matches in Japan. I thought both matches were well done. I was invested in them from start to finish pretty much. I really enjoyed the pacing and the flows of both of them. So I'll go 4.5 on both of the Japanese matches.
Yeah, I go 4.5, maybe 4 3/4 on Akiyama Misawa.
I can see that.
4 3/4. I mean.
Yeah, I was just saying. I can see why you go that route.
But these are excellent matches.
Yes.
These are excellent matches. And next week, we have some excellent stuff. We have a Bockwinkel versus Kurt Hennig match from 87.
Okay.
We have Bob Backlund versus Greg Valentine from WWF 4/3/23/84.
Mm-hmm.
We have some Battle Arts. Daisuke Ikeda versus Alexander Otsuka from Battle Arts 11/5/97.
Okay.
And Mayumi Ozaki, Kuti Suzuki, Candy Otsuku, and Soryo Toyomoya versus Dynamite Kansai, Double Masami, Hikari Fukuoka, and Hiromi Yagi. 4-on-4, 1 count match from JWP.
Okay, that's match screams chaos. I mean, that just screams so much stuff happening in the match. So that's probably like a sensory overload in terms of wrestling.
Yes, so I suggest just watching these matches separately, and that because I think all 4 of these matches are so different. That's what I love about randomizing everything. It's so different.
That was a good idea. I think randomizing everything so it's you get entirely different looks and entirely different styles, different stages, different promotions. I think that was a good idea.
Yes. So, and that's the point of doing this. Is just to really get to watch some great stuff.
That'll work. Now, you wanted to talk about something that literally just happened a couple days ago.
Yes.
TakeOver 31. The main event, which we all knew was going to be good once it was versus Finn Balor for the NXT Championship. And it exceeded expectations, I think, for both of us.
I think this is a 4.5-star match of the year contender for me.
This was
if it's in my top 5 right now.
This was really good.
2020 wrestling hasn't been great, but this match was.
You're right. This year hasn't had the standouts, but hasn't had too many standouts, but this one definitely does.
You have the 2 dome main events. You have Will Hiromu. You have a couple stuff from the G1. You have a couple stuff from AEW, but really,
I think you have Bate and Jordan Devlin in January, but other than that, yeah, not too much else.
I don't think anyone's going to vote for that match after.
Probably not because of what's happened since. Unfortunately, which kind of kills the buzz that the match should have created. But yeah, I understand why people would be like, yeah, let's not do that one. I understand that. This match was, and we knew because you kind of got the technical brawler style of Balor versus the technician style of O'Reilly, and it just meshed. It just clicked, and it instantly connected, and it instantly fit. Well, yes, O'Reilly can brawl, but he's much more of the tech style. And yes, Finn can tech, but he's much more of the brawl.
I think this match would have been elevated by a full sellout crowd. This match was awesome.
Yes, this match would have got a whole lot more, I think, a whole lot more energy and juice to it. Not that it didn't have it, but this would have got a whole lot more energy and juice. Yes, you're right, with a full crowd. But I think that's one thing that makes this match really good is that the fact that these two really don't necessarily need full crowds to put on classics. Because these two are so used to wrestling in like bingo halls or like in front of like 200 people or whatever. Like these two can put on a really good match just for the sake of putting on a really good match. I mean, these are two guys that really don't need a crowd to go and put on a 4-star or 4.5-star like this match is. So this was I think this would have been fine no matter what, but you're right. I think this would have got a whole lot more buzz had this been in front of a crowd, definitely.
Yeah. So plugged.
Twitter.com/Beast Mike is where you can find me. I've obviously been tweeting about a bunch of stuff that's going on lately when it comes to the baseball. The Yankees getting it done, the Astros as well, getting it done yesterday. We saw Governor Wolf put out that crowds can be back in Pennsylvania sports, up to 7,500 people or 15% of the particular building. Philadelphia is going to have to rule differently. I don't know if Mayor Kenny came out with anything different. So in the event of the next Eagles game, and Pittsburgh's mayor, whoever he or she may be, with the Steelers Eagles game, ironically coming up on Sunday. So good timing there. But Twitter.com/Beast Mike's where you can find me. I'll obviously be talking about a bunch of stuff, usually in the world of sports.
And you can follow me, DJ D Kooks, on Twitter, where I basically retweeted a bunch of people lately because I'm just so mad at the world. I think everyone's mad at the world right now, but especially after what our president just pulled. But
yeah, Trump gets COVID and then basically acts like it's no big deal. It still acts like it's no big deal. This dude is stubborn. It acts like it's no big deal. And then now he's back for Walter Reed, and it's like, whatever, go on. He's basically asking for those numbers to go up in terms of the positive count and the death count. This can't, and not that it's already ended well, because it obviously hasn't, but this is, yeah, he really did downplay the severity. This dude is stubborn.
Yeah.
My goodness, this dude is stubborn, and it's worse because people are believing the stubbornness and agreeing with the stubbornness.
Yeah, it's unbelievable.
It is.
Unbelievable. But enough about politics for today.
Yep.
Thank you for listening. It's just it warms my heart that you all listen. Thank you. Have a good day.